that a woman would not do her hair for him, right? And it's fascinating. So anyway, sorry.
Did he end up with coffee in his lap?
Interestingly, there were my partner and, as I said, I'm poly, so my partner and my sweetie, both male, were at this dinner party, and they were both incredibly angry, right? So you see these two very geeky, very polite men trying to figure out how to leap to my defense on this. And it was a horribly awkward end of the conversation, and then they left. So it was a very strange thing. Anyway, so that's jumping off your topic. That's a good one to go back to.
Actually, as someone who works in media, I find that, well, unfortunately, media is a male-dominated industry. At best, you'll get, you know, the person who's going to give you the weather on TV, like, and after her, there's very few serious female reporters. Not only that, there's very few serious female minority reporters. It's just, you know, it's the nature of the game, unfortunately. On the media side, they're not really encouraged to be very, I don't know, there's no encouragement of being very discerning about this sort of thing. Nobody's going to stand up and say, you know, you're kind of perpetuating a stereotype there. Because especially with broadcast media, it's more of a, well, that's interesting, it'll probably get us some high ratings. Whatever. There's just not that many people that are going to be considered like that. And the few that are there, well, it's been a tough time in the newspaper industry and broadcast lately, so they're all teaching at Columbia College now, actually.
All right, well.
I know.
I
work in their department.
Are you in the journalism department?
No, fiction writing.
I do think that female geeks in the media tend to get pathologized. I guess I want to say that too. Is that if you see them, they're like Fred on Angel, right?
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
super smart and really broken in a whole bunch of ways, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you tend to see. Like if a woman is allowed to be really smart, there's something else really wrong with her at the same time.
And then there's a little bit of the opposite of that too with things on the internet, because anytime you have hot geek girl thing on the internet, it kind of explodes. There's so many YouTube videos of, okay, I'm a musician, this is actually what I've spent most of my life doing. I've played piano since I was 5. So I see a lot of these people on YouTube doing the, oh, I'm a hot geek girl, and they'll do something where, I mean, often they're not really good singers. The song is really terrible, and it has about 2 million hits. So I mean, I could do that too, but I don't. And so then I kind of feel like I'm missing out on those 2 million YouTube views, because my music just is not that.
Well, it's an interesting question too, about like, you know, when my first book came out, I was doing the author photo for it, and it was a book of erotica, and my publisher was like, so are you willing to do a boudoir photo for the cover? And you know, like, and I was 20 at the time, and it looked okay, and you know, I thought about it for like one brief moment, and then I was like, you don't know, like I'm selling the writing, right? And I think it's an interesting, it's a choice, right?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Get your prize, and Dawn has been quite kind to donate some of her brand new CDs.
Yay!
Howdy, great panel so far, by the way. Just quickly, for a question for Dawn. The Daleks were annihilated at work. It's not even like the preference over from Doctor Who over the Next Generation. It's the fact that the Daleks are so fearsomely evolved to the highest point of evolution based on pure destruction. They stole the Earth and the stolen Earth and crashed into a star. And the Borg would adapt to not dying from stars after they all died in the star.
You obviously thought about this quite a bit, but is there actually a question?
Yes. Yes, my question. In the past few years, especially attending conventions that I've attended since I was about 9 years old, various conventions, I found that the word, not to lead you guys with this question, but the word fanboy has become excruciatingly offensive. because it belittles someone, it mocks their passion, it trivializes what they're saying, and views them not as a person, but as a sycophant. A friend of mine in New York, I was talking to her on Facebook about this, and she said she's equally offended by the word fangirl. I was wondering if you agree with such a sentiment, or if there's an equally offensive word to which you are referring.
You know, I would say that it's actually hard for fangirl to have the same cultural connotation as fanboy, because our culture is so invested in masculine strength that calling an adult man a boy is inherently offensive, right? I mean, especially if you think about race relations and the history of the use of boy used by white men against black men. I mean, that's just, I don't know how you get away from that, really. Whereas girl, applied to adult women, should perhaps be as offensive, but it's not read that way, right?
I would read it that way. I mean,
as somebody who is an adult woman,
yeah.
I think any adult woman should be considered an adult woman because we are adult women, and I think calling somebody a girl suggests that they're maybe not necessarily as endowed with wisdom or as mature or as experienced as maybe they are, and I think it just kind of discounts whether it's a man or a woman. It just discounts their ability to be and to exist and to promote a sort of era of like, this is who I am, I'm an intelligent, smart person, and I'm also really nerdy. I think it's important to distinguish.
I would agree with that. I find actually being called a girl, and like being addressed as girl, to be really, really offensive. And it's rough when it's done completely unintentional by a good friend and they're just like, you know, like even hey girl, I find really offensive because for me, my gender has nothing to do with who I am as a person. And it sort of belittles me in a way. It's like you can, I do have a given name, you know, you can use that. So I think that girl for me is pretty offensive in general.
Thank you. It's not, it's pretty, like, it tends to be kind of affectionate and just kind of funny.
Yeah.
And it's context, probably, is what's mattering most for all of these. Like, do you know that person? Do you not? Do you know if they're going to be offended by it? I mean,
Dude, you forgot your CD.
Yeah, and so I think that for me, that's why it's sort of, because I think it's definitely a personal, like, I don't think it's, I don't think it's culturally offensive, but I think that it's definitely a personal preference, that it's just not. To me, I don't find it affectionate when it's directed towards me, regardless of who it is.
I think I did call myself a fangirl earlier today when I was tweeting because I had learned that John Barrowman was going to be at this convention.
And I did see that.
And so for me, if I use it to refer to myself, it kind of indicates I'm reverting to being 12, right? I'm just gleefully excited.
Well, because the noise that you made.
I did try to figure out a way to reschedule all my photo shoots.
Because John Barrowman is apparently the great equalizer here.
Have any of you ever faced condescension or aggression from other females, like as steampunk as you are? I was in the SCA for a time, which is a Society for Creative Anachronism, which is full of nerds and geeks. And at one point, at one conference, I went to a woman and I said, your costume is beautiful, what pattern did you base it off of? She turned to me and she said, real costume, real garb doesn't use patterns. And I was just so like put off by that I stopped going to SCA events. Have any of you ever experienced that, and how did you react to someone in your own gender basically putting you down for something that you enjoy?
There's a real cultural push for women to have to be the only one, and at the expense of other women. And it's appalling and it's horrifying because if anything, you should be able to look at another woman and help lift her up. And it's really a tragic response to culture that women feel that pressure, and then they feel the pressure to be the best, and so then they turn around and go, I made it, so screw you, I'm going to keep you down because that makes me better. And I think it's a response to the fight that they had to get there, but I don't think it's an excuse. And I think that it's a really awful thing that there's a lot of women that embrace that idea that I fought my way to the top, so I'm going to make it hard for you to do it. Because I did, so you have to. And it shouldn't be like that. And like we were talking about with the networking thing, finding those groups of women and finding those people that you can talk with who will then help lift you up. And the more you explore those groups of people, they'll put you in touch with more of those people and more of those people. And hopefully, as that circle grows bigger and bigger, we can affect change. Because it's really awful to put somebody down because you had to fight for something. It's not necessary.
I would add there are assholes everywhere. And you shouldn't let one drive you out of something great. You know, like I used to do SEA. I think it's cool. You know, so screw her. You know,
It all depends on what group you're in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very friendly.
Yeah, I think that I would always just in general recommend to do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Because you can never control how other people view you or other people's reactions to you, but what you can do is control your reaction to them and be like, well, tough shit.
Well, one time I was at a steampunk event and there was someone giving out ribbons that said, you're a great steampunk outfit. And she handed one to a guy friend of ours and didn't give one to her and said, oh, you don't look steampunk enough.
Well,
and I was just like, why would you do that to another?
You need to like either call them out on it or keep going in the direction that you're going and ignore.
Also, I mean, it's interesting to think about, like, why would you, I wonder why the person is setting herself up in a position to be validating one person over another's. I was at an airport once, and I used to have hair down past my butt, like really long black hair, and a man walked up to me and handed me a pre-printed business card that had a sketch of a woman and the words, your hair is beautiful, don't ever cut it. And, like, he carried these around with him, right?